What if I told you that some of the most drought-resistant food crops on Earth aren't found in seed catalogs or at your local garden center? They're still growing quietly in desert villages, ancient farmlands, and forgotten fields, places where generations survived harsh climates using crops that modern agriculture largely abandoned. These are plants that thrive when temperatures break records, plants that keep producing food with little or no irrigation while other crops in your garden wilt. Meanwhile, the modern seed industry mostly sells varieties bred for ideal conditions, conditions that, in many places, no longer exist. As climate change destroys harvests around the world, many of these incredibly resilient crops are being ignored, even though they laugh in the face of extreme heat. Your ancestors fed entire civilizations through droughts that lasted decades. They relied on plants perfectly adapted to their environment, plants industrial agriculture quietly pushed aside. And here's something fascinating. Crop number 2 on this list once helped feed the Aztec Empire during brutal heat, and it contains more protein than most grains grown today. So today, we're looking at 12 crops that thrive in extreme heat, and why modern farming tends to overlook them. Welcome to the channel where we uncover forgotten solutions that modern industries buried. If you believe nature already solved many of the problems corporations now sell back to us, then you're in the right place. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below telling me how hot your summers have become in recent years. Now, let's jump into the list of 12 crops that grow in extreme heat, ranked from impressive to absolutely incredible. Number 12. Okra, the African survivor. Okra originated in the scorching highlands of Ethiopia, where temperatures that wilt most crops feel completely normal. Centuries ago, farmers in the American South adopted okra for one simple reason. When summers became brutally hot and humid, okra was one of the few vegetables that kept producing. And that's exactly what makes it remarkable. While tomatoes often drop their blossoms when temperatures reach 90 degrees Fahrenheit, okra is just getting started. In fact, it often grows faster and produces more pods when temperatures climb past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It thrives in conditions that would wipe out many other vegetables. Those distinctive sticky pods are packed with fiber and vitamin C, and they've even been used medicinally for generations. Growing okra is simple. Plant it after the soil warms thoroughly, water deeply about once a week, and it will tolerate drought that destroys other crops. Harvest the pods while they're still young, and the plant will respond by producing even more. For anyone whose summer garden collapses by July, okra is the African survivor that keeps producing when almost nothing else will. But while okra handles extreme heat beautifully, the next crop does something even more surprising. It continues producing crisp, refreshing fruit when regular cucumbers turn bitter and die. Number 11. Armenian cucumber, the heat-proof producer. Despite its name, Armenian cucumber likely originated in the scorching regions between Turkey and Iran, where summer temperatures regularly climb above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And unlike standard cucumbers, it actually thrives in that kind of heat. Most cucumbers become bitter and stop producing once temperatures soar. Armenian cucumbers keep growing, and their flavor stays sweet and mild even during heat waves. The long-ribbed fruits can grow up to 3 feet long, although they taste best when harvested young, around 12 to 18 inches. Interestingly, it's technically a melon rather than a true cucumber. That's one reason it tolerates heat stress far better than standard cucumbers. The skin is thin enough that it doesn't need peeling, and the flavor is milder and sweeter. Plant it in full sun and give the vigorous vines a trellis to climb. While your neighbors complain about bitter cucumbers and dying vines, you'll still be harvesting crisp fruit all summer long. For gardeners tired of heat-ruined cucumber harvests, Armenian cucumber is a heat-proof producer that just keeps delivering. But what if you could harvest fresh greens during the hottest months of the year, when lettuce and spinach bolt almost immediately? The next crop makes that possible. Number 10. Malabar spinach. The tropical green, regular spinach struggles the moment temperatures climb past 75 degrees Fahrenheit. It quickly bolts and turns bitter. Malabar spinach does the exact opposite. In fact, it barely grows until temperatures pass 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And once they do, it explodes with growth. Native to tropical India and Southeast Asia, this climbing plant produces thick, succulent leaves with a flavor similar to spinach, but slightly milder with a hint of citrus. The hotter the weather gets, the faster it grows. Its vines can climb more than 10 feet on a trellis, producing fresh leaves continuously until frost. For gardeners living in hot climates, Malabar spinach offers something rare, reliable leafy greens in the middle of summer. The leaves have a slightly slippery texture, similar to okra, which actually makes them perfect for soups and stir-fries. Some varieties even grow beautiful red stems, adding a surprising ornamental touch to your garden. Plant Malabar spinach after the last danger of frost has passed and give the vine something sturdy to climb. Harvest the leaves regularly, and the plant will reward you by producing even more. For anyone who misses having fresh greens during the hottest months of the year, Malabar spinach is the tropical alternative that thrives when lettuce and traditional spinach give up. Malabar spinach keeps you supplied with greens through summer heat. But the next crop does something even more impressive. It not only feeds you, it actually improves the soil for everything else you grow. Number 9. Cowpeas. The soil builder, most people recognize these as black-eyed peas, but in reality, there are dozens of varieties grown across Africa, where cowpeas have been cultivated for thousands of years. Farmers there discovered something remarkable that modern agriculture often overlooks. Cowpeas don't just produce food, they rebuild the soil while doing it. Like all legumes, cowpeas pull nitrogen from the air and store it in the soil, naturally fertilizing your garden. While they enrich the soil, they also produce edible pods and dried beans. And unlike green beans, cowpeas absolutely love the heat. They keep producing even when temperatures climb into the triple digits. Young pods can be harvested and eaten just like green beans. If you let them mature, the seeds dry on the vine and store easily for later use. Even the leaves are edible and packed with nutrients. Cowpeas tolerate poor soil and drought conditions that would wipe out most crops. Plant them after the soil warms and watch them thrive while your bush beans struggle to survive. And when the season ends, the roots leave behind nitrogen that benefits whatever you plant next. For gardeners who lose their green bean harvest every summer, cowpeas can rescue the season while quietly rebuilding the soil. Cowpeas feed you and restore your garden at the same time. But the next crop comes from Asia, and its pods grow so unbelievably long that people often stop and stare when they see them. Number 8. Yard-long beans. The Asian wonder, these extraordinary beans can grow pods up to 3 feet long under the right conditions. They originated in the hot, humid climates of Southeast Asia, where families have relied on them as a staple crop for thousands of years. And there's a reason they've survived so long. While regular bush beans and pole beans slow down or stop producing in extreme heat, yard-long beans do the opposite. They speed up. They're closely related to cowpeas, which explains their impressive tolerance for hot weather. The long, slender pods are best harvested when they reach about 12 to 18 inches. At that stage, they snap cleanly and have a flavor somewhere between green beans and asparagus. These plants are energetic climbers, so they'll need a strong trellis or support system. Like cowpeas, they also fix nitrogen in the soil, helping improve your garden while they produce food. Even hot nights that cause regular beans to drop their blossoms don't seem to bother yard-long beans. For anyone who loves green beans but lives in a place where summers are brutal, yard-long beans are the Asian wonder that keeps producing when conventional varieties surrender. Yard-long beans provide impressive harvests in extreme heat, but the next crop is so nutritious and so resilient that aid organizations around the world now plant it in developing regions to help fight malnutrition. Number 7. Moringa. The miracle tree, moringa, is a fast-growing tree originally from the foothills of the Himalayas, but it has spread across tropical regions worldwide. And once you understand what this plant can do, it's easy to see why. Few crops match its combination of nutrition, resilience, and productivity. The leaves contain more vitamin A than carrots, more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, and more potassium than bananas. All of that nutrition comes from a tree that happily grows in temperatures above 100 degrees Fahrenheit and survives drought conditions that would kill most plants. The young leaves taste like a mild, slightly peppery spinach and can be harvested continuously. Even more impressive, the tree grows so quickly that you can begin harvesting leaves just a few months after planting the seeds. In tropical climates, moringa can become a permanent food source that requires almost no care. In cooler regions, gardeners often grow it as an annual or keep it in containers that can be brought indoors during winter. For anyone looking to produce maximum nutrition with minimal water and effort, moringa truly earns its reputation as the miracle tree. Moringa provides incredible nutrition with very little maintenance. But the next crop has quietly fed families for thousands of years, especially during seasons when other vegetables completely fail. Number 6. Sweet potato, the underground survivor. While regular potatoes struggle in hot, humid weather, sweet potatoes absolutely thrive in it. They originated in tropical regions of Central and South America, where indigenous farmers have cultivated them for more than 5,000 years. And there's a good reason they've remained a staple crop for so long. Sweet potato vines actually prefer temperatures between 80 and 95 degrees. When drought hits, their deep roots help them find water that other plants simply can't reach. The nutritious tubers grow underground and store naturally in the soil until you dig them up, allowing you to harvest only what you need. Even the leaves are edible and highly nutritious, often cooked the same way as spinach. Sweet potatoes are incredibly productive, producing more calories per square foot than almost any other garden crop, and they require very little care. Even better, they're extremely easy to start. You can grow new plants simply by sprouting slips from sweet potatoes you buy at the grocery store. In many ways, sweet potatoes might be one of the simplest and most reliable crops a hot climate gardener can grow. Plant sweet potatoes once the soil has warmed thoroughly and then simply let them grow. They require very little attention through the summer, quietly developing their harvest underground until fall arrives. For anyone looking for a dependable crop that produces plenty of calories, thrives in hot weather, and stores well without refrigeration, sweet potatoes are the underground survivor that rarely disappoints. Sweet potatoes wait patiently beneath the soil until harvest time. But the next crop helped ancient African civilizations survive droughts that lasted for years. Modern agriculture largely ignored it. But as the climate changes, this remarkable plant is starting to regain attention. Number 5. Sorghum, the forgotten grain. More than 5,000 years ago, farmers in Africa domesticated sorghum in some of the hottest and driest regions on Earth. While crops like wheat and corn would have failed, sorghum thrived and helped sustain entire empires. And in a warming world, its strengths are becoming impossible to ignore. Sorghum can produce grain using about 40% less water than corn. It also survives temperatures high enough to sterilize corn pollen, which would prevent corn from producing any harvest at all. Even more remarkable, when drought arrives, sorghum doesn't necessarily die. Instead, it can go dormant and wait for rain before continuing to grow. The grain itself is incredibly versatile. It can be cooked like rice, ground into flour, or even popped like popcorn. Before cheap sugar became widely available, sorghum syrup was one of the main sweeteners used across the American South. After the grain is harvested, the remaining stalks can also be used as animal feed, meaning very little goes to waste. For decades, modern agriculture focused heavily on corn because it produced larger yields under perfect conditions. But as weather patterns become less predictable, sorghum is quietly making a comeback. For gardeners interested in growing a grain that can handle the challenges of climate change, sorghum is a forgotten crop that once fed civilizations through drought. Sorghum produces grain with remarkably little water. But the next crop comes from the deserts of North America, where native communities successfully farmed it for thousands of years in conditions that seem almost impossible for agriculture. Number 4. Tepary beans, the desert miracle. The Tohono O'odham people cultivated tepary beans in the Sonoran Desert for more than 8,000 years. In this harsh environment, summer temperatures often exceeded 110 degrees, and yearly rainfall averaged only about 5 inches. Most common beans would die within days under those conditions. Tepary beans, however, evolved specifically for that kind of climate. They are capable of producing an entire harvest from a single monsoon rainstorm. Their root systems grow up to 3 times deeper than those of common beans, allowing them to reach water hidden deep in the soil. When drought intensifies, the plant has another clever survival strategy. It sheds its leaves to conserve moisture and then regrows them once rain returns. The beans themselves are highly nutritious, containing even more protein than many common bean varieties. When stored properly in dry conditions, they can last for decades. Historical records from Spanish explorers describe desert communities thriving on tepary beans during droughts that devastated nearby European-style farms. As irrigation systems spread, farmers gradually replaced tepary beans with more familiar varieties. Today, however, seed banks are working to preserve these ancient beans as their value becomes clear once again. For gardeners living in dry regions, tepary beans represent an incredible crop, refined by 8,000 years of adaptation to the desert. But the next crop is even older. It was one of the first grains humans ever cultivated, and it remains one of the most heat-tolerant crops on Earth. Number 3. Millet. The first grain, about 7,000 years ago, early farmers in both China and Africa began cultivating millet, making it one of the oldest domesticated crops in human history. They chose it for a simple reason. It succeeded where other crops failed. Millet is incredibly resilient. Many varieties mature in as little as 60 days, allowing them to complete their life cycle before drought conditions become severe. They tolerate poor soils, extreme heat, and minimal water while still producing nutritious grain. Another advantage is that millet contains no gluten, making it suitable for people who cannot tolerate wheat. Its mild flavor works well in porridge, breads, pilafs, and even traditional fermented drinks. While modern agriculture focused heavily on wheat and corn, millet continued quietly feeding hundreds of millions of people across India and Africa. especially in regions where those more demanding grains struggle to grow. Growing millet is surprisingly simple. Scatter the seeds once the soil has warmed, keep weeds under control, and harvest when the seed heads dry. For anyone searching for a dependable grain that can handle conditions that destroy corn and wheat, millet remains one of the best options available. Millet has sustained civilizations for thousands of years, and now we reach the crop mentioned at the beginning, the grain that once helped build an empire under the intense heat of Central America. Number 2, amaranth, the Aztec superfood. When Spanish conquistadors first arrived in Mexico, they discovered the Aztec Empire thriving on a grain unlike anything they had seen before. That grain was amaranth. It was so important to Aztec culture that it played a role not only in their diet, but also in their religious ceremonies. The Spanish authorities eventually banned its cultivation in an attempt to weaken Aztec traditions. For centuries, the crop nearly disappeared. But today, as farmers search for crops that can tolerate extreme heat, amaranth is beginning to attract attention once again. And there are very good reasons for that. What makes amaranth truly remarkable is its nutrition. This grain contains more protein than most other grains and includes all 9 essential amino acids that the human body needs. Even more impressive, it thrives in temperatures above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, heat that would prevent many other grains from even pollinating. And amaranth gives you more than just grain. The leaves are also edible and can be harvested as nutritious greens while you wait for the seeds to mature. It grows well in poor soil, tolerates drought, and still produces generous harvests. The tiny seeds can be popped like miniature popcorn, cooked into porridge, or ground into flour. 5 centuries after Spanish colonizers tried to wipe it out, amaranth is quietly returning to gardens and farms around the world. For anyone looking for a complete protein grain that thrives in extreme heat, amaranth is the Aztec superfood that refused to disappear. Amaranth once helped feed an empire through intense heat. But now we've reached number 1, a plant that does something truly remarkable. It produces food, medicine, and refreshing drinks, all from a single beautiful plant that thrives where many others fail. Number 1, Roselle hibiscus. The complete package. Most people think of hibiscus as an ornamental flower grown for its beauty. But Roselle hibiscus is a different species entirely, one cultivated for its fleshy, edible calices, the bright red parts that form after the flower fades. Originally from West Africa, Roselle spread across tropical regions around the world because of one simple reason: it produces an incredible amount of value with very little effort. And that's why it earns the top spot on this list. Roselle thrives in scorching heat that would stress or destroy many other crops. After the flowers fade, the deep red calices are harvested and used to make the tart crimson drink served in many Mexican restaurants as agua de Jamaica. These same calices are packed with vitamin C, often more than oranges, and have been used in traditional medicine for centuries to support healthy blood pressure. They can also be turned into jams, jellies, sauces, wine, and herbal teas. Even the young leaves are edible, adding a tangy flavor to salads and cooked greens. And as if all that weren't enough, Roselle is simply beautiful. The plant produces striking red stems and creamy flowers with deep red centers that make it as ornamental as it is useful. Once established, Roselle tolerates poor soil and drought surprisingly well, and the seeds are easy to save for future seasons. For gardeners looking for a single plant that provides food, medicine, beauty, and resilience, Roselle hibiscus truly is the complete package. These 12 crops represent a kind of agricultural wisdom that modern seed companies have largely overlooked. Industrial farming bred crops for perfect conditions, constant irrigation, chemical fertilizers, and carefully controlled environments. But those perfect conditions are becoming harder and harder to maintain. Your ancestors survived droughts that would devastate many modern farms because they grew crops adapted to reality, not ideal conditions. Amaranth fed powerful empires. Tepary beans sustained desert communities. Millet nourished billions of people, while crops like corn and wheat struggled without perfect weather. These plants are not primitive substitutes for modern crops. They are highly refined solutions developed over thousands of years by farmers who had no irrigation pumps, no synthetic fertilizers, and no climate-controlled greenhouses, only experience and observation. If you're interested in trying them yourself, start small. Choose 2 or 3 crops that match your local conditions and see how they perform during your hottest, driest months. Save seeds for the next season and gradually expand from there. After a few years, you might find yourself wondering why anyone struggles with crops that demand perfect weather. These plants evolved to produce food when almost nothing else survives, and they're ready to do the same for you. If this video opened your eyes to what can grow when everything else fails, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below telling us which crop you'd plant first.